Having a word with your old self. Seems an odd concept really, doesn't it? But I know I've spoke about being kind to the person that you were before. But there has been a weird thing that's happened to me today. Somebody told me about your vision being damaged, possibly by psychological reasons, and psychological trauma being a reason for why your vision has gone bad. So I looked into this, and it's actually got some standing. Weirdly enough, it has some standing. And I thought back into it and looked into myself, and what side, my vision on my left side is terrible. It's got worse from the age of about 19. And from the age of 19, I had to give up a then dream of being an art teacher. I say then because it's worked out for the best, and I'm really glad that I never became that, because I don't think I'd be happy. Although saying that, I don't know who I would be then, so there's no point saying shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? So I sat with myself and thought about it, and there was still stuff that I was holding on to. And it was around the concept of being creative. Now, if you didn't know, your left side is controlled by your right by your left. So, and basically the right side of your brain is supposed to be your creative, your left side is your logical. So your eyeballs are on the other way around. So you see, it's really odd how it works out. Look into it. If you ever want to know, literally this side is to this side is to this side. But your right side is the creative. When I was 19, I had to give up, as I said, my then dream of being an art teacher. And I cried, and it was the most damaging thing I had to do. And I did not pick up a pencil or paper for 8 years. But I realised within that time I did nothing creative, and everything in that point of time I did was destructive. Don't get me wrong, I faced some of the things that I would never have done, but I came at it with logic. So when I finally was creative and let the emotional creative side of me go, I realised I've had to deal with everything that was the emotional creative side of me. And even up until that point, I was still not allowing myself to be creative, because creative was a waste of time. And it was that leftover bit of, I'd shut off my creative because I told myself at 19, no longer could I be creative because I was needed to be logical. And I'm not gonna lie, I've had a weep over it. I've had a full-on cry. I've gone around the house and looked at where my creativity has forced itself out. That wasn't done by me, but that picture there was painted by me. I don't know if you guys can see it. I have pictures all over that I create. This house is decorated. My bedroom is Harley Quinn. My dining room is Gotham. My bathroom used to be Poison Ivy until it had to be redecorated. My creative side in the last 8 years, because it's been 8 years either side, well, that's scary, has been screaming to get out, and I would never allow it. I would allow it in little bits to heal and use it as therapy. And what I didn't realise was I was releasing it and then closing it back off, releasing it and closing it back off. And me crying today was me releasing it. And it makes me go back to, have you had that conversation with your old self, where when you realise what you've done, do you punish yourself or do you say thank you? Because my logical self had to take over. There was no other choice. I was in flight or fight. I was in survival mode. I had to survive for me and my family. But it meant that I was never able to understand anything emotionally. So whenever I did have these open bits of emotionality, we're going with it, emotionality, I would never know how to handle it, and I would have close to depression. Well, I had postnatal depression. I've been diagnosed as having depression, anxiety. It would come out in disorders, or it come out in an unhealthy way, and I would have full-on breakdowns because I just did not know how to handle stuff emotionally, because I wouldn't allow myself to handle stuff emotionally, because I'd learned that if I couldn't allow myself to be emotional. I wasn't allowed to be creative. I wasn't allowed to be emotional. I had to be logical, because the logical was surviving. That was a logical thing. And now I'm allowed to be creative. And I've fought and held on to being logical. And it's screaming to get out. Listen to yourself. I know it sounds such a weird thing to say, but we all have an inner monologue. We all talk to ourselves. Don't tell me you don't, because you're a liar. You do. And we need to listen to ourselves more, because there's something inside of us that's always trying to speak to us, tell us something. And I know for a long time now, my breakdowns, and I've had full-on meltdowns, breakdowns, whatever you want to call it. I've been in bits on the floor. I've had suicidal thoughts. I'm telling you these things because I know what it feels like, and I'm hoping that it would help somebody release from that themselves. Listen to yourself. There was a time where you've had to go from one to the other. Yet the thing of vision has just come out now, but I realized that my full-on breakdown where I never allowed myself to be emotional was from that point. I had to be strong. I had to be dependable. I had to be solid. I could not show weakness. And that was the decision I made then, and it helped me. So I thank it. I thank it for everything that it did for me. I thank it for helping me survive. I thank it for helping me raise my daughter and then my son. I thank it for making me realize that I needed to get myself sorted out. I thank it for understanding that it was needed, and is to this point, sometimes is still needed, because there's always something from that point that you learned that you use now. But my takeaway from this is, listen to yourself. You've probably at one point gone one or the other. If this resonates with you, you want one way or the other. And more often than that, not, we go logical, because it's the logical answer. But if your emotional side and your empathetic side and it's screaming to get out, it will show it. It will show it in some sort of way. Thank your logical side for standing up to that survival mode. Thank you. Thank it. Have a toast. Drink to it. Tell it. You couldn't have survived without it. But I tell you now, once you realize, and once you open Pandora's box, you can't go back. Once you've learned something, you can't unlearn it. And once you realize and take that step, no matter how much you try and shove it back into that box, you can't do it anymore. And that's what I was trying to do. And now my box is open. My Pandora's box is wide open. And I've never been fucking happier. I don't know why I'm telling you all this and how emotional I'm getting over it, but I had a thought today. Would my 14 to 15-year-old self, who was in such a dark place, be proud of who I am? And I honestly, without a shadow of a doubt, said yes. And that made me prouder than anything I could have ever done, with the exception of my kids, alright? But that's what it meant to me. So I hope this helps somebody. I really do. So if you like this video, I know I got a bit emotional at the end of it. If you like this video, like, subscribe, comment, share with somebody who you think's going through the same thing. But I just wanted to share this with you because it feels amazing.